Everyone was talking about the cult leader's miracles. I quietly got the doctor's report. My Alzheimer's father's miraculous recovery was actually fake medicine. That night I made my plan, but when I discovered his real identity, the entire neighborhood was shaken. My name is Sarah Martinez. I'm 42 years old. I still feel my hands trembling as I tell this story, because what I experienced wasn't just fraud, it was a much darker truth. And this truth would affect 73 families in Chicago's quiet neighborhoods. Fairview neighborhood was one of Chicago's most peaceful places. With its tree-lined streets, friendly neighbors, and calm atmosphere, it seemed like a perfect living area until David Thompson arrived. My father, Robert Martinez, was a 68-year-old retired math teacher. He had educated thousands of children for 40 years. But now he was struggling to remember even his own name. He was in the early stages of Alzheimer's disease and was having increasing difficulty recognizing me day by day. My most painful memory was when he didn't recognize me one Monday morning and asked, "Who are you? What are you doing in this house?" At that moment, he was looking at me as if he was seeing me for the first time in his 68-year life. This must be heartbreak. I had lost my mother to cancer 5 years ago. Now I felt like I was losing my father too, but this time in a much slower and more painful way. He was diminishing a little more each day, as if his soul was slowly evaporating. My neighbors constantly talked about David Thompson. They called him the Miracle Man. He was a charismatic man in his mid-40s, tall with gray eyes. He held weekly meetings at the Fairview Community Center. At first I thought it was New Age nonsense, but what my neighbor Mary Johnson told me was enough to make me stop. "Sarah, you should see Mrs. Williams' husband. 2 months ago he was lying there like a vegetable, couldn't remember anything. Now he's doing garden work with his wife, reading the newspaper at breakfast, recognizing his grandchildren. If this isn't a miracle, what is?" The light in Mary's eyes was real. There was no reason to think she was lying. Desperation drives people to strange places. That week my father and I went to the first meeting. When we entered the Fairview Community Center, I couldn't believe my eyes. There were nearly 60 people there, all listening to Thompson with worship. Elderly people, middle-aged people, even young couples. Everyone had the same hopeful expression on their faces. Thompson was standing on the stage, speaking in a deep and hypnotic voice. "Friends, modern medicine has disappointed you because it only sees the body and ignores the soul. I'm different. I lived in India for 7 years, learned ancient knowledge. I received training from Tibetan masters." He walked toward my father. His long fingers touched my father's head. He closed his eyes and seemed to enter a deep meditation. "Robert, the spirit within you is very strong. This disease is just a temporary fog cloud. We will disperse it." When Thompson's hands left my father's head, there was a strange change in my father's face. He looked more alive. There was a sparkle in his eyes. What was shocking was this. On the way home, my father said to me in the car, "Sarah, this man is really special. Something changed inside me." He hadn't spoken a complete sentence with me for 3 weeks. That night my father took out old photo albums and told past memories for hours. When he looked at my mother's wedding photo, his eyes filled with tears. "She was a beautiful woman, Sarah. I miss her so much," he said. I hadn't heard this sentence for 6 months. The next week we went again. This time Thompson pulled me aside after the meeting. There was deep understanding in his eyes, as if he was reading my soul. "Sarah, your father's condition is really special. The spiritual energy inside him is very strong, but this disease is blocking it. Real healing requires private sessions. Of course, this requires financial sacrifice, because special materials and rituals are very expensive." At first he asked for $200 weekly. "For the sacred herbs I brought from India, special crystals from Tibet," he said. It was a big part of my retirement salary, but the sparkle in my father's eyes was worth everything. Thompson gave my father a brown pepper-tasting powder. It came in small glass jars. "This is a 5,000-year-old ancient formula. Himalayan monks only give it to chosen patients, very rare and sacred." And something incredible happened. My father's condition really improved. His memory became clearer day by day. He could play chess with me, solve old mathematical problems, and even chat with neighbors. 2 weeks later, we went for a doctor's checkup. Dr. Adams couldn't hide his amazement. "Mrs. Martinez, this condition is very rarely seen in medical literature. Your patient's cognitive tests show 60% improvement. Even MRI results have changed. How is this possible?" This result made me even more attached to Thompson. I was now paying $400 weekly. I was slowly depleting my retirement savings, but it didn't matter. My father was alive, truly alive. At the end of the third month, Thompson made a big announcement. "Sarah, I need to perform a very special ritual for your father. I had sacred soil brought from a holy cave in Tibet, materials personally blessed by the Dalai Lama." I paid without thinking, because my father was better than ever. He was doing garden work with me, reading books, and even helping with cooking. Neighbors were saying Robert's recovery is a miracle. But Thompson didn't stop there. In the fourth month, he asked me for another $8,000. "Sarah, the progress in your father is so fast that we need to do special crystal therapy, otherwise he might regress." This fear surrounded me. I didn't want to lose my father again. I took out a home loan and gave him the money. In total, I paid Thompson $31,000 over 8 months. I took out a home loan, sold my car, even sold my mother's jewelry. But my father was alive, truly alive. Thompson's meetings were now held at the Riverside Center, a much larger place, because the number of members had exceeded 150. Everyone had miracle stories. Lisa Anderson's 8-year-old daughter's autism had improved. Michael Brown's chronic back pain had gone away. James Wilson's cancer tumors had shrunk. Thompson was now driving a luxury car, wearing expensive suits. "Spiritual work brings material abundance," he said. "Money is also energy, like love." Until that terrible night, while cleaning Thompson's private room at the Riverside Center, something fell. The locked drawer of the desk was left half open and a thick file fell to the floor. Inside were dozens of doctor reports, drug prospectuses, and identity documents. His real name wasn't David Thompson, Daniel Rodriguez, 47 years old, former pharmacist. The file contained court documents from 10 years ago, 3 years imprisonment for drug trafficking, pharmacy license revoked. But what was truly shocking was the drug list in the file: Aricept, Donepezil, Memantine, Rivastigmine. These were all Alzheimer's drugs, real FDA-approved prescription drugs. The sacred herbs were actually drugs stolen from hospitals. The file contained even more horrifying details. Separate files for each patient: Robert Martinez, Alzheimer, Donepezil 10 mg daily; Mary Williams, dementia, Memantine 20 mg; James Wilson, cancer, Capecitabine tablets. My hands were trembling. My father was getting better, but not because of Thompson's spiritual powers, because of the real drugs he stole. And from whom was he stealing these drugs? I couldn't sleep that night, because there was an even more terrifying truth. If Thompson's drug source was cut off, my father would become sick again. But I couldn't turn a blind eye to other families being defrauded either. I planned my strategy. First, I started following Thompson. For 2 weeks, I watched his every move. I saw him constantly going to Chicago General Hospital. He frequently met with a hospital technician named Michael Davis. I followed Davis and learned the disgusting truth. Davis was stealing expired or scrap drugs from the hospital, and Thompson was selling them at 10 times the price. But worse, some of the drugs had actually expired. They were ineffective and potentially harmful. I also secretly investigated Thompson's home. He lived in a luxury apartment, had a BMW in his garage. He was sharing photos of Maldives vacation on his social media accounts, with our money. When Thompson asked me for the last big donation, it was time to set the trap. "Sarah, the progress in your father is amazing, but for it to be permanent, a big ritual is essential. I need to make a special trip to Tibet. I'll meet with the Dalai Lama. $15,000. "Okay," I said, but this time I was working in coordination with the FBI. My friend Jennifer worked at the FBI. When I explained the situation to her, she said, "Sarah, this requires a big operation, but the evidence is strong." When I gave the money, there was a tracking device on it. We would track Thompson's every move. They had also put Davis under surveillance. Meanwhile, I explained the situation to Dr. Adams. We had my father's blood tested. The result was horrifying. There was a high dose of Donepezil in his blood, but the drug metabolism products were at abnormal levels. Mrs. Martinez, who gave this drug, deteriorated drugs can cause serious damage to kidneys and liver. Also, this dosage is completely wrong, the doctor said. Now it was time to act. When the last meeting night came, there were 120 people at the Riverside Center. Thompson took the stage as usual, in white clothes, with a crystal staff in his hand. "My dear friends, tonight is a very special night. We'll perform the great ritual for Sarah's father Robert, with the $15,000 donation, with the most sacred materials I brought from Tibet." That's when I stood up. "Mr. Thompson, or should I say Daniel Rodriguez, we can end the meeting now." His color drained, the crystal staff fell from his hand. "What do you mean?
I mean that you were arrested for drug trafficking 10 years ago, and the sacred herbs you're distributing tonight are actually spoiled drugs stolen from Chicago General Hospital." The 120 people in the hall were shocked. Some stood up, some started shouting. Thompson tried to escape, but FBI agents Agent Johnson and Agent Smith were waiting at the door. "This is slander. This woman is crazy. She's plotting against me," he screamed. At that moment, Dr. Adams took the stage, holding blood tests and drug analyses. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want to explain Daniel Rodriguez's real methods to you." The doctor explained with scientific data that Thompson's miracles were actually the effects of stolen and spoiled drugs. The most painful moment was seeing the reactions of the people in the hall. Lisa Anderson was crying, saying, "I thought my daughter's autism really improved." "Mrs. Anderson," I said, "if your daughter starts real treatment, she can continue the same progress, only this time it will be safe and controlled." As Thompson was being arrested, one more thing came to light. Agent Johnson announced Daniel Rodriguez was also wanted for drug trafficking. This operation victimized 73 people in 3 states as the leader of a gang. Total damage $890,000. Michael Davis was also caught at the hospital the same night. Both were tried in federal court. The trial lasted 8 months. 73 victim families testified in court. Thompson had defrauded a total of $890,000. The oldest victim was 81-year-old Eleanor Patterson, who paid $45,000 for Parkinson's disease. The youngest victim was 6-year-old autistic child Tommy Chen, whose family spent $30,000. Thompson received an 18-year prison sentence. Davis received 5 years. The hardest part was arranging my father's treatment. With Dr. Adams' help, we started real Alzheimer's drugs. The disease didn't completely go away, but it's progressing in